Welcome all of you to yet another episode in the Bulldoze Topic of the Week series. So definitely it is the happy time going on for India as we have just received the chairmanship of G20. So definitely India will be chairing the meeting of G20 for 2023, and this is a great success. It is a momentarily success not only for India in its domestic politics but also in the international world order. So besides the G20 celebration, we have one another celebration, that is that India has received the plenary chairmanship of Wassenaar Agreement as well. So we are going to discuss what is the Wassenaar Agreement in our episode, why is it so significant for India, and what is it related to. So let's get started. So briefly starting with the news that on the 26th annual plenary of the Wassenaar Arrangement, which was held in Vienna. So at this event, definitely previously the chairmanship was in the hands of Ireland, and now it is rotationally gone, of course, in the basket of India. So Ireland has handed over the chairmanship of Wassenaar Arrangement to India starting from 1st of January 2023. Not only this event is significant for India in terms of its geopolitical order, but also it is important in energy aspect as well, and we'll see why. Wassenaar Arrangement, if I tell you what is exactly this Wassenaar Arrangement, this is related to the export control regime, which is primarily its main objective is to control the export of nuclear based or nuclear supplies in the world. So it is a voluntary export control regime. As I read here, it is a voluntary export control regime, and the name Wassenaar actually comes from the Wassenaar, which is a suburb of the Hague, Netherlands, where this agreement to start a multilateral cooperation was actually reached in consensus. So in 1995, in the suburb areas of Netherlands named Wassenaar, there this agreement was actually it came into this shape, which is why this arrangement is called as the Wassenaar Arrangement. And the body came into the being in 1996 finally, to succeed the Cold War era Coordination Committee for Multilateral Export Controls. So previously Wassenaar Arrangement is actually the successor of the Coordinating Committee for the Multilateral Export Controls, which was previously formed during the Cold War era. And of course, even in the Cold War era, the idea was to control the exports of the weapons, of the unarmed vehicles, and even of the nuclear supplies. And Wassenaar Arrangement is again focused on controlling the exports of the nuclear supplies across the member as well as the non-member nations. And it is currently headquartered in Vienna, Austria. So this was the brief about the Wassenaar Arrangement, and definitely, like we have mentioned, that it was started in 1996, but India, because India is the 42nd member, so India is the last member to join the Wassenaar Arrangement somewhere in 2017. So in 2017 precisely, India has joined the Wassenaar Arrangement. Again, at that time, it was a much applauded step which was taken by again our central government in terms of the nuclear supplies, in terms of geopolitical order, and all the multilateral export control regimes. So behind me, this is a map which shows the 42 members of the Wassenaar Arrangement. Now the most interesting fact here is that China is not the member of Wassenaar Arrangement. However, China is member of NPT, China is member of United Nations Security Council, but for the Wassenaar Arrangement, still China is not been accepted as the member. Now, definitely there are certain criteria which is to be taken care while even entering in the Wassenaar Arrangement. So if I talk about what are the criteria of joining this group, So firstly, of course, the consensus is required, very important, as if all the members, they have equal voting rights, and if let us say the members are not agreeing to accept a particular nation, so then your membership may be discarded. So here the consensus of all the existing members is very important. Second most important is, if you are the producer or the manufacturer of the if let us suppose, you are the producer or the manufacturer of the arms or the sensitive industrial equipments. If you're manufacturing, producing, exporting the of course the weapons or the industrial equipments, the sensitive industrial equipments, the arms, then you can apply for the membership of the Wassenaar Arrangement. Third and the most important, if you are actually abiding by, or you have engaged or involved in your national policies some kind of rules and regulations which adhere to the other multilateral export control regimes. For example, Australia Group, NPT or Non-Proliferation Treaty, then Nuclear Suppliers Group, which is the NSG, then MTCR, right? So all these are the they're almost like the Wassenaar Arrangement. So if a nation is already abiding by or already a member of one of or even all of these export control regime, or they have inbuilt the national policies which somewhere adhere to the rules and regulations which are given in these particular arrangements, so then you are qualified as the member of Wassenaar Arrangement, right? And of course, lastly, if you maintain fully effective export controls, if you have effective control policies in your nation, then also you are qualified or you are one of the candidacy to the Wassenaar Arrangement. So all these, when in 2017 when India was given the membership of Wassenaar Arrangement, of course India has inbuilt nuclear policies, the well established nuclear policies, even the export control policies are in place at that time when India received the Wassenaar Arrangement. So of course, Wassenaar Arrangement, not only it is important for India from the nuclear supplies, but also in the nuclear order world, India has got its place by getting this membership. Speaking of the objective of the Wassenaar Arrangement, it definitely, it is believed that it helps in regularly exchanging information in respect of the technology. Yeah, of course, because even when we talk about the participating states, so they share the information every 6 months even to the non-member nations as well, to make sure that they adhere to what they have set in the guidelines of Wassenaar Arrangement, and make sure that all the member nations, all the 42 countries, they abide by the charter for which the Wassenaar Arrangement had actually come into the place. And even every 6 months they actually give the detail of their in the 8 most important broad weapon categories. So the broad weapon categories information which is shared by all these member countries, for example, the battle tanks, the armored fighting vehicles, the large artillery, the artilleries, of course, large caliber artilleries, then military aircrafts, military helicopters, warships, missiles, missile systems, and small arms and light weapons. So all of these broad categories information is shared between the member nations and even to the non-member nations, to tell them that okay, what the member nations have done and what is the limit that they have basically set in to sustain in the Wassenaar Arrangement. And if you are not abiding by the set rules, then it may lead to the disqualification of the, or even the discontinuation, termination of the membership as well. So this 8 broad categories is set under the Wassenaar Arrangement, and the participating states are binding to of course share. And since it is not a treaty, Wassenaar Arrangement, it is named as an arrangement, not an agreement. The reason being, it is not a treaty, it is not a legally binding treaty. It is just based on the trust of all the member nations, that whatever information they are providing, whatever guidelines that they have set, so it is based purely on trust that all the member countries will abide by the charter, the rules which they have collectively agreed upon, right? So this is very important information, because sometimes in the question it is mentioned that which of the following information is incorrect or correct about arrangement. So it is just an arrangement and not a legally binding treaty. Then next, it is of course it involves in maintenance and updating the detailed list of the chemicals, and it is involved in controlling the movement of technology, material or components to the countries or entities which undermine the international security. So Wassenaar Arrangements, it strictly puts control on all the intrusive software sharing also, which may prove to be fatal in the international security point of view. However, from the point of view of India, if I say that what benefits it may have got to India, definitely that intrusive softwares, because there will be sharing among the members, that intrusive software will become like a blessing for Indian defense system, as there will be sharing of the intrusive softwares. However, if we speak of the plenary, the Wassenaar plenary, which we are just discussing, that so every year in the usually in the month of November and December, this plenary, which is a decision making body of this arrangement, so all the representatives, all the members, all the representatives of the member states, they meet once in a year, and this meeting is basically called as the plenary meeting, which is a decision making body meeting, right? And this is this takes up the chairmanship of the succeeding year. So for example, in this December meeting, till 1 year Ireland was chairing the meet, and now for the next year India will take over as the chairperson of this plenary or the decision making body. So definitely it is not only important for India will be standing at a place where it can actually make difference in the nuclear export control regimes, and the countries which are of course which are yet to be holding this place. So this is a chance for India to prove its worth, that okay, yes, we can also be called as a nuclear power, we can also take some stringent actions, and we can definitely put forth that nuclear use of nuclear power for the for the mass destruction is to be prohibited, but only used for the civilians. So for the civilian purposes we are ready to use the nuclear weapons, but not for the mass destruction. As you all know that there were quite rumors that Ukraine and Russia, during the Ukraine-Russia war, it was sensationalized for once that one of the parties is going to use the nuclear power against the other. So this is again a big challenge, that today if they have power, they can misuse it. So which is why the control regimes, the export control regimes are in place to stop expanding the misuse of the nuclear supplies across the world, right? Now moving on to the significance of chair, as I had mentioned that yes, it now apart from making a stand on the geopolitics, it came into the time when even India was standing against the anti-terrorism efforts, and even India is of course taking a strong stand that it will prevent the arms diversion to terrorists. And over the 2 decades there had been a lot of terrorist attacks, not only in India, in the Asian economies, but to the rest of the world as well. So India, at standing at this place, definitely will try to narrow down all the fundings to the terrorists and all the nuclear supplies which are being given or indirectly being given to the which are funding the anti-terror and to the terrorism right now. And this act as a strong anti-proliferation framework as well. So proliferation, by the term, it means that if you are manufacturing or you are using the nuclear supplies, and this Wassenaar Arrangement and India holding the chair, India will definitely put forth that we are not promoting the nuclear arrangements. And even India in its defense policy has used the no first nuclear weapon use, which means no first use, which stands that India in any kind of situation is not going to use the nuclear weapon in the first place. If it has been attacked by a nuclear weapon by any of the opponent or any of the other country, only then it will be using, but in the first stance it is not going to use it, right? So this is in itself a very strong policy which is India has come up with. Not only India, there are many other nations also which has the no first use policy, and it is in adherence to the NPT and NSG and even the Wassenaar Arrangement, which we are discussing right now. So the last one is democratization of space and defense technologies. It is important, as all these space and defense technologies, it is important to share the technologies and the proper use of technologies within the member countries in a way that it benefits all the nation. So not only misusing, but even sometimes there are the technologies which is better to be shared with the nations to make the apt and best use of it, right? So this chair is going to provide I would say a wider access to India in terms of other nations. Now let us quickly jump to what are the other regimes which are currently holding the same space along with the Wassenaar Arrangement. And yes, of course, the most prominent one in this group is NSG, which is the Nuclear Suppliers Group. Now NSG is a group of nuclear supplier countries which seeks to again contribute to the non-proliferation of the nuclear weapons. And Nuclear Suppliers Group it came right after India tested the nuclear bomb in 1974. In 1975, NSG talks started that how do we proceed with coming up with a group that strictly bans the use and supply of nuclear power across the world, because at that time again it was not expected from India to test fire the nuclear weapon and coming up with such weapon in its place. And because Indian economy was not a very good economy, was a weaker economy back then, so it was suspected that all the P5 nations and G7 nations, they were quite worried about the fact that if India could do it, then even the other nations can also do so, which is why the period of 1975 to 78 was the period of discussions and the groupings. So this period is also called as this group NSG is also called as the London group, because all the meetings were held in the London, right? So this is very important. So NSG London group, again it was promoted by all the G7 nations, and P5 nations are the member of the NSG. And NSG currently it has 48 member nations. Now the interesting part is that India is not the member of NSG, and India is trying hard to be the member of NSG. China is the member of NSG, and China states that India can only be the member of NSG if India signs the non-proliferation treaty. Now non-proliferation treaty, I hope आप लोगों को, बहुत सारे लोगों को इसके बारे में पता है, which fairly started in 1970s, and which states that all the nuclear powers जिन्होंने nuclear weapons को test किया है before 1967 can only be recognized as the nuclear power blocks. Otherwise, any other nation which has test fired after 1967 will not be called as a nuclear power, or will have to literally go for the disarmament. So this clause, particularly when it started, when the NPT was started somewhere in the 70s, and it came up as a fact that NPT is mainly to non-proliferate all the weapons of mass destruction, all the nuclear weapons across the world. India has not signed NPT for the very strong reason that NPT is biased for all the major blocks, all the P5 and the G7 nations, and it is quite skewed, and it is favoring those nations which have test fired the nuclear weapons prior to 1967. And if India signs the NPT, then India will have to withdraw all of its nuclear arrangements. and due to which India has not yet signed the NPT. And China, because China is the member of, China has ratified the NPT and is also the member of NSG. China is taking its strong stance that we are, if not only China, even Turkey is there, Austria is there, New Zealand is there, which are in against of the fact that India must not be given NSG's membership based upon the fact that it has not signed the NPT or the non-proliferation treaty, right? Then next, speaking of the NSG, like I had mentioned that it has in total 48 participating nations as of now. China is a key member, and of course, you know, NSG's working structure is almost similar, going on a similar track, that it controls all the supplies of the nuclear weapons across the member nations and non-member nations. So NSG in its way, it has supported India once in 2008 when it has given India a waiver to have the nuclear trade with the member nations. So इन ल्यू ऑफ दिस वेवर, ऑफ कोर्स जब इंडिया को एनएसजी की तरफ से एक ये वेवर मिला इन 2008 दैट इट कैन एक्चुअली हैव अ न्यूक्लियर ट्रेड विद द एनएसजी मेंबर कंट्रीज. सो इट वाज ओनली बैक देन इन 2008 दैट यूएस एंड इंडिया हैज साइंड the nuclear agreement, which is again, you know, if you read the entire agreement, it is basically an act जो कि एक US India का nuclear civilian nuclear agreement act था, which means that USA is going to support India in terms of the you know, nuclear supplies which will be used for the civilian purposes only. And under this act only, USA also pledged to support India in all the multilateral control regimes as well, which means that USA is going to support India in getting membership in all of these regimes. So जिसके through of course, you know, 2008 में ये पहला स्टेप लिया, एंड 2017 में इंडिया हैज गॉट द वासनार अरेंजमेंट्स मेंबरशिप. सो ये 10 इयर्स का आई वुड से एक लॉन्ग पीरियड था, जिसके बाद इंडिया को फाइनली एक सक्सेस जो थी वो वासनार अरेंजमेंट की मेंबरशिप के रूप में फर्स्टली मिली थी. एंड इवन इंडिया ड्यूरिंग दिस टाइम लाइन ओनली इन 2018 देन इंडिया हैज गॉट द मेंबरशिप ऑफ द MTCR, which is Missile Technology Control Regime, which we will definitely continue further. So then next we discuss about the Australia group. So the Australia group, it is an informal forum of the countries. Again, ये एक informal forum है, right? And basically again based on the harmonization of the export controls, and it was prompted in the year 1985 after the Iran-Iraq war of 1980-88. उसके बाद ही 1985 में ये ग्रुप बनाया गया to stop the use of the chemical weapons. To stop the use of chemical weapons. So Australia group has you know, a good about a list of the nuclear chemical weapons basically, which they restrict the export of, and they put certain kind of limitations on the member nations on the usage of those chemical weapons in the non-civilian purposes, right? So this group has a list of 54 compounds. 54 components are there in the list which they are currently dealing in, and they make sure that all the member nations, they abide by this particular list, right? And currently it has 43 members. The Australia group, it has 43 members. India is not the member of the Australia group as of now. So India abhi tak India has joined, India has joined the Australia group in the year 2018. So India is the member of Australia group, and India has joined the group in 19th of January 2018, and they decided, Australia group, they had decided to include India as the 43rd member. So India was the 43rd member of the Australia group. And last but not the least, we have MTCR, which is the Missile Technology Control Regime. So this is again an involuntary, this is again an informal and a voluntary organization, जिसमें अभी तक 35 member parties हैं. There are only 35 countries which are the parties to the missile technology and the control regime. And ये क्योंकि voluntary partnership है again on the proliferation of the missiles and the unmanned aerial vehicle, which is called as UAV, unarmed aerial vehicle, right, which has a carrying capacity of 500 kilograms payload, not for more than 300 kilometers, right, not for more than 300 kilometers. If there is any vehicle which has a carrying capacity of the 300 kilometers and 500 kilograms payload, so that is called as the UAV, which is unarmed aerial vehicle, right. So it was established in the year 1987 by the G7 countries. So I hope you all know what all are the G7 countries. So G7 countries are USA, UK, France, Germany, then we have Canada, Italy and Japan. So these are the G7 nations which have started the missile technology control regime back in 1985, and since it is not a legally binding treaty, so no punitive measures can be taken against any member who have not abide by or who have not fulfilled all the guidelines which are mentioned, right. So back in the 2016, India was inducted into this into the MTCR. So MTCR में India was inducted in the year 2016, which is again a big success along with the Wassenaar Arrangement, right. And India was inducted in 2016 as the 35th member. So India was the 35th member to the MTCR, right. So currently, as I had mentioned, that India's presence in these groups is quite of an importance, as not only it will lead to a regular supply, regular nuclear supply, but it will give a voice of India in the international world order that okay, we also have the nuclear weapons, we also have nuclear supplies, we can also speak about the nuclear disarmament, which is currently the hot topic in the geopolitics, right. And not only this, there is one more reason that why India wants the regular supplies, regular uranium supply. The reason being that unconventional sources of energy is in the limelight these days. As we know that currently India's energy requirements are more or less based on the conventional sources of energy, crude oil and coal, which is summing up to be 60 to 70%, which is actually fulfilling our 60 to 70% of the demand. Currently, merely 3 to 4% the nuclear source of energy is providing only the 3 to 4% of our demand. It is catering only 3 to 4% of our demand, which is very low. And we are currently in the line of Agenda 2030 sustainable development goals, and we want to cut down all the conventional sources of energy, for which the unconventional sources of energy, India is currently it is on a head start to do that. So we have solar energy, hydropower energy. So of course, this is one line, and one is the nuclear source of energy, which is considered to be one of the most efficient source of energy in the unconventional ones, right. So in this particular area, we need a good flow of nuclear supplies, so that we can be reliable on the nuclear source of energy as well, and we can cut down the 60 to 70% of the energy dependency on the conventional sources. So which is why the our presence in all the export control regimes has given us a boost of a regular flow. Not only this, even when in 2008, when India has signed the agreement with USA, and after getting the waiver from NSG, India had kickstarted its bilateral nuclear trade, nuclear agreements with not only USA but with the UK, with Australia, with France. So many other, we have literally pipelined the nations with which we could have or we even had signed all the nuclear trade deals with these nations. So even the presence in the NSG will will bolster our need of nuclear supplies, and not only that, it will boost our presence in the nuclear world. So that is all related to the Wassenaar Arrangement and the multilateral export control regimes. What is NPT? As we all know that NPT is very important from the exam point of view. India has not signed it. There are some other nations also which have not signed. What is the importance of NSG? That is again very important. When was NSG came into the effect, and why India is favoring NSG but not NPT, and China actually holding back our NSG's membership, for the matter of fact that we have not signed the NPT. So that is all for today, all of you. I hope you liked the session. If you did like it, don't forget to share it among your friends, and don't forget to hit the like button so that we'll get back with more such innovative and informative content to all of you. So that is all for today. Thank you so much.